Hello, it's Dina, the Shower Genius podcast, and we're here today with my good friend Geoff Hudson Searle, and I can't wait to have a conversation with you today, Geoff.
Thank you, Dina. I'm excited to be here. It's always great to talk to you. We've had a few of these, and myself, I was really looking forward to being on the Shower Genius.
Awesome, awesome. I'm glad to have you here. I want you to tell everybody what we were just talking about being Aquarians, because we're both Aquarians.
Yeah, I think, look, apart from the fact that we're both water carriers and we like carrying water, look, stars aligned. I mean, there's some very interesting energy shifts in the world, and sorry, the universe today. Um, the Aquarius has had the planet Saturn in our sphere for the best part of 30 years, and the shift that we talked about is for the first time ever that's going to be moving. I mean, on Friday we've got the eclipse, which is quite a big deal, right? That's on the 29th. That's a really big deal. And as a direct result, on the 29th, that will take Saturn into Pisces for the first time. And I think there's some intervention with Pluto, but irrespective of the transcendence of all these planets, it does actually mean that there's going to be quite a big energy shift um, into the world, and I think that's definitely needed, right? I mean, I think that um, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, and I think that it effectively, for me, as far as I'm concerned, it'll be the start of the year.
Yeah, that's
so,
awesome.
that's the way I'm looking. But yeah, I love the stars and I love the planets. I do follow them. I think that when we look at the world today, everyone talks about the fast change of everything we're doing, but the planets do have an actual influence over our mood, over our energy, and when there is alignment or there's trians or whatever's going on, I mean, apart from that, I don't know if you've been to Sedona, but you know how much I love Sedona. So, and the canyon around there, it's beautiful just to look up and watch the stars and the showers. And I mean, I got to say, I'm a big fan. I mean, I don't need TV. I just need stars.
Yeah, I've been to Sedona multiple times, and it is beautiful.
Love Sedona. I've got my spiritual family there, and they're beautiful people, and love them dearly, and always enjoy just being there with an open fire pit, just looking up and then
Yeah,
hearing the coyotes in the background.
that's true. Um, I kind of feel like Telluride is like that too, because it's just a creative atmosphere for me because the mountains and it's
Yeah,
just beautiful.
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
I want you to tell everybody what you do in the world and how you got started having your own business.
Yeah, of course. So I was a what do I do in the world? I started off as a banker. I was head of commercial finance for Citi, Citibank as it was in the time, Citigroup now. That was where I really had my base education, finance, and quite a large responsibility in underwriting and working with large sums of lending to the insurance marketplace for a while. 10 years then around the world, launching big Fortune 100 brands. I was traveling a lot in those days. I still carried on traveling a lot as I went into corporate. Chief exec of Metro Media, that was a big turnaround. Moved to Russia with the Kaspersky, launching Kaspersky into North America for the first time. Back to London and then back out to China, doing some significant work. I've worked in over 121 countries in my life, which I'm quite proud in doing so. It's been an amazing experience, amazing ride. After that, I was the chief executive officer of a large PLC on the London Stock Exchange, and then after that, RG Group. That was taking 5 companies to 3, buying 3 more, and doing the integration, and took them to the London Stock Exchange. That was about 18 years ago. So that was the premise, really. I felt that I had gained a lot of experience across all the disciplines, finance, operations, C-suite, chief exec roles, uh, group CMO roles, etc. and commercial roles. And it got to the point where it was kind of like, I really want to do this for myself. Even though doing it for myself for the very first time was exciting, that was the very start of my non-executive director's career as well. So I've been doing non-exec now, and independent non-executive director roles, and chairman of Remco now for about 18 years. So I enjoy being on the board. I enjoy managing and supporting companies through change and to exit. I mean, that's a big part of my life now still. But the consultancy's fun. For the last 18 years now, I mean, we're doing some really cool stuff around mindset, because we think that, Aubrey Hepburn, right? What is it? Impossible. No, that means I'm possible, right? So it's like, if you think about mindset, we launched a new product last year, Doug and I, called Entrepreneurial Leadership. And that's all really about changing the mindset of people and engaging people, and then moving that really into like design-led systematic thinking and innovation. And innovation, everyone talks about innovation, but very few people actually get a value proposition and really go to a granular level and then start executing these things, which is what we do. We do business strategy at the highest level, and then we do strategic partnerships, and we do a lot of business planning, and we do a lot of evaluations. And right now we're doing global executive leadership training in different parts of the world. We're very excited about that. We've always done that, but we've always done that as part of a program. We've now got a new product called Global Executive Leadership Competency and Training, and we're sort of rolling that out now into sort of areas of the Middle East, and quite extensively, and in the UK. But we're having a lot of fun with it too. So it's good. It's diverse. It was always time to sort of look at the market needs and look at learning and development, looking how upskilling is an important characteristic, but knowing that we have to be able to support our customers with that. So that was really the evolution. It was really mainline corporate, international corporate career, big change programs, big turnarounds, big programs around the world, and then sort of leading that into the consultancy. And I'm still doing the non-exec. I'm on a board for a company that's in Australia, London, another board that's in Denmark, Sweden, Middle East and Africa, and the UK. So enjoying that, having fun doing it.
So how many hours a month do you spend on a plane?
That's funny. So last year was interesting because I'm not 30 anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So in those days I was doing 80 trips a year, 3 countries every week, generally doing the globe, the world 3 times over every year, right? And last year I had to go to Denmark, Sweden, Dubai, London again. Then I flew out to Vienna the next day, Austria, and then I had to go to Macedonia for their largest business awards program. I was the speaker, being brought in to talk to 400 senior executives at the awards. So that was like 11,000 miles in 1 week.
Oh my goodness.
So I was a bit jet lagged. I was a bit jet lagged, to say the least, and I was a bit tired. And I haven't done that really since I was in the heyday of traveling all the time. I did 15 trips last year, so I don't think that's immense. This year I was in Singapore. I was in the US. I was supposed to go to Australia. I canned that trip. I canned another trip recently. So I'm trying to pick my trips a little bit more. That we talked earlier about balance of life. I'm trying to get a better balance with what I'm doing, and traveling doesn't help my hours. It just creates more. So I'd rather be doing a productive, engaged, meaningful, purposeful week where I'm giving to my clients, I'm giving to the companies that I represent, and actually doing that rather than doing messaging in the sky. It just doesn't work.
I know. I thought I traveled a lot, but not as many countries. It's that close. But I think I always had the intention of getting work done on a plane, but it never really happened.
Yeah, in the old days, I would get a little bit of work done, but in the old days when when the comms were not in the sky, um, I'd use it for rest because I didn't really get a lot of it in those days. Right. So I used to use it as a sleeping and just resting because I can sleep on planes. Now, doesn't matter what airline I go on, um, I'm always being, I'm taking messages and all the time. It doesn't matter what time zone, where I am, what I'm doing, you know, um, and unfortunately, that's yeah, it's what it is. It's the world we live in, right? So,
Mm.
but
Yeah, it is. And I think it's a perfect time to ask you this question is, what do you do now to have more balance in your life than you did 20 years ago?
yeah, you know, it's interesting. My babies in life are my books, right? So um, I I have this love for writing, and I have these ups and downs with it because like I went away at Christmas to Sri Lanka, and I was writing at home, and I was like, sorry, at the hotel. I was having some downtime, and then realized I've got all this creativity coming forward again. So I'm like, 6 articles were produced in 2 weeks of being in Sri Lanka, right? So it was like interesting. But I did some fun stuff out there. I mean, I had downtime, which is rare for me. So I went on a hot air balloon, Dumbella and around there. I took some rest, and I was with my best friend and his wife, and Brooklyn was there, and it was kind of nice being a part of the family and being with them, in a nice part of the world. And I did rest, and I needed it. By God, I needed it. So when I came back, my feet didn't touch the ground, and then I ended up flying again, off to the States again, and then it all started again, and
Mhm.
so forth. So the balance bit in reflection is really important. So um, since I met the love of my life, I'm doing a bit more better balance because she's kind of dictating to me that I need to do certain things, and I think that's very positive, right? That's incredibly positive to a better balance, a better well-being of my life. Um, I'm going on nature walks, which I never did before, really. I mean, I've got so much nature around me, but I very rarely go and take advantage of that. Um, I go to the gym 3 times a week. I do PT 3 times a week. And that is amazing for the mind. It's amazing for. I switch off. I don't touch the phone. The phone won't even come. I don't care who's calling me or who's texting me. I'm in PT. That's it, right? So the PT has been very good. And then when going to the city, I average probably 12,000 steps, 15,000 steps every time I go to the city on meetings. So the combination of gym, steps, and going into nature, and actually taking some time where I don't even look at the phone. Like weekends, I'm spending less time on things like LinkedIn. I'm generally doing LinkedIn Monday to Thursday now. I'm sort of drifting off Thursday, and you won't get me back on until Monday. I might have messages I'll look at, but I'm trying to reduce phone time and I'm finding I'm a better person for not being on phone time. Additionally to that, I've always been a big subscriber to Reiki because that puts me in a great zone and place. So yeah, I mean, look, I never thought I would be having to do all of the balancing here with all these things, but in order to stay mind healthy and fit and well-being, I find those balances are very, very good.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that the biggest thing for me that happened when I started doing more of that was I got more creative and I got more
Yeah,
productive.
yeah, 100%. And I think I had this conversation with Douglas recently as well, and I said to him, it's not about the doing, it's about the focus and doing things smarter and better. And
Mhm.
that is what we have. We have to make better decisions about the things we are doing, but more smarter, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're having a hard time being creative, you just need to take a shower because 72% of people say they have the best ideas in the shower.
Well, I do. I do. I love the shower, right?
Mhm.
It's true. It's true, right? You're in the shower and you go, oh, oh, oh. And the other thing is driving. So when I go to Arizona, go to Sedona, when I'm driving up the highway, Highway 10 or whatever it is, Highway 19, all I see is canyons. So I'm driving, and again, I have great ideas.
Yeah, it's
Great
true.
ideas in the same way because you've got all that open space, just like
Mhm.
you've got in Colorado. You've got lots of open space, and so you're able to be super creative because your mind starts to work, right?
It's very, very true. And I've tried a lot of things, but what I've found is best to take notes in the shower
Yeah,
is something called Aqua Notes. And it's like a pad of paper that's coated with something so it can get wet and you can still write on it with this pencil.
that's incredible.
It's amazing. So I promote that to everybody, and I'm going to reach out to them, see if they want to, sponsor our podcast, because
I love that. I
I
love that.
think I think their product is amazing, and I use it every day. So
I went to see a Indian chief in Hopi many years ago, many years ago, and I loved his philosophy. And he said, Jeff, Jeff, the water always continues along the stream. And when there's a rock in the stream, the water always goes around around the rock and continues its journey. I love that. Right?
that's
I
awesome.
absolutely love that. I've never forgotten that.
That's a good one. Well,
And
I know there's a topic that you're very passionate about that you want to talk about. So I want you to talk to our audience about trust.
thank you, thank you. I love. Look, this is beyond passion for me. I mean, the, I've been studying trust, and as you know, my last book was called The Trust Paradigm. So I launched that back in 22, but it's the compilation of of research and knowledge and personal experience of 30 years of international business. Both me and Mark, when we wrote the book, I don't think there is a bigger issue in the world today than trust, right? So if we start to look at erosion of trust over that period, it's just got worse, worse, worse. And if you start to look at the last 10 years, it's got decisively worse. If you pick up any Edelman report, trust report, you'll see the statistics. Now, they do country by country trust statistics, which is actually quite interesting. Irrespective of that, we have grown away from societal, right? So if we're not listening to one another, we're not empathetic or compassionate to one another like we used to. We're not understanding each other. We're not even communicating. How do you expect to collaborate with someone unless you're communicating with someone? But furthermore, there's no purpose anymore. It's just everything is transactional. So if you start to look at the trust economy, you know, trust affects the stock markets, it affects financial decisions, it affects marriages, it affects government, it affects business, supply chain management, doesn't matter what area of life or what area of life that you sit within. Trust is still the biggest issue in the world today. I mean, we've tried to look at this in different guises and tried to really get to the understanding. And I was on television with the launch of my book, discussing this. And I said that, look, I love London. I love London. I'm English. I'm from London, but London is like 8 million people running around like hamsters. No one's connecting, and London is the most connected, or one of the most connected cities in the world. But we're not. We're not trusting one another to do the same. We we have technology which is amazing. It enables us to connect all around the world, 24/7, 7 days a week. Everybody waits for that notification buzz. And but we're not really connecting. We're sending messages of intentions, but there's no depth to that. And you know, trust is basically a series of incremental um, actions that builds up. credibility and trust. Just like if we had an emotional bank account would be like, if you do something positive, I'll give you a credit. If you do something negative, I'll give you a debit. And if you start to look at societal in that way, but we've got to start getting back to some of the basics. The value systems that you might see in Italy, or the value systems you see in South America, as an example, they're just gone. We don't have them. you know Everybody's just interested in not wanting to miss the latest TikTok or latest this or latest that. Years ago, when I wrote the book Meaningful Conversations, I started to touch on this. We go into restaurants then, and I'm talking about 2014 at that point, right? That's 11 years ago. You go into restaurants, and people weren't interested in talking to one another, right? They were just interested in sharing a TikTok or sharing a Facebook post or something like that. And look, fake news. Everything you see online, you've got a question, because is it real? Is it about the truth? Did that really take place? Did that really happen? I mean, I saw a YouTube video the other day on an aircraft carrier where there was a 747 taking off. It wasn't a 747 taking off an aircraft carrier. It was AI giving them a fun YouTube video, right? So you have to constantly question. We're living in a world that is highly, highly subjective around the reader and around the audiences. What do we believe? What do we not believe? And then you start talking about, well, if we don't get it right even at home, okay, because obviously leadership starts at home. Yeah, leadership is in business. Yes, leadership is supposed to be in government, but there are some highly suspect decisions that are being made around the world in government, which is then, and people look to government and how they behave and how they lead. And really what trust is, and people think trust is just the fluffy stuff. It's not. It's correlated to financial bottom line, yes. It's connected to how people behave. It's a psychological safety for everyone to actually encapsulate and be a part of. Trust is the very reason why I get up with hope, because I get up every morning with hope, hoping that I will connect with a trusted partner, or a trusted opportunity, or a trusted decision that's going to be made on the board, right? But if we have to have ambassadors of trust, and we have to have demonstrable examples of how trust really works. We have got a problem, and I think this problem at the moment is just going to deteriorate and erode and get worse. It was the famous Tom Peters many years ago, and said, "Technology is not the issue of the decade. Trust is." And I think that sums my passion for trust. But again, my book, The Trust Paradigm, articulates this subject very well. But we've got to make change. We've got to have change, because society cannot continue with mistrust, misinformation, and more importantly, the losses that are being sustained are because of trust, and it can't go on.
Yeah, I think that you hit on something that I think is so basic to our humanism, I guess is the best way to say it, is like, if we can't trust people that we spend the most time with, or the people that we work with,
Sure.
how do we, that's the erosion of mental health right there. Because if
Yeah.
we don't have a trusting relationship and a supportive relationship with somebody, or people that we can reach out to when we need help or we need to talk, that is the erosion of each of our mental health and how we can show up in the world.
Yeah. I still get a lot of emails every day. I'm seeing a decline in emails. I'm seeing a lot more people wanting to speak on a regular basis, talk. And I think that's a positive, because, as you said, how do we know what's going on in someone's life if we don't actually bother to reach out and actually ask them? And you're right. I mean, as I said, we've got to start. And I think the problem is too vast. too big to take a big scale solution to this, but we can create impact from small groups of trusted triangles, and looking at how we can evolve the trust impact around the world, right? Um, and there are some countries that are doing it better than most. I mean, trust isn't just about financial; it's about happiness, right? And when you look, it's a bit like saying to know that you're loved from both sides makes the sun shine, right? Let's look, talk about love, right? I'm quite happy to talk about love because you can't be in a relationship where there's no trust. It's empty.
think-
Yeah.
I think
You can, but it's going to be very transactional.
right. Yeah. Well, for anyone listening to this may or may not know, I have a nonprofit for suicide prevention, and Geoff has been very supportive of that mission. And I think that fits into this conversation because our whole mission is to let people know they're not alone. And the only way they're going to speak up and get help is if they trust someone to talk to them.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the same thing in the business world. If you have employees that aren't happy and they don't trust you, they're never going to tell you or talk to you about it. And then you can't fix it. So if we have trusting relationships where we feel like we can speak up and we can speak our mind and we can have a conversation about what we need as whatever we need for ourselves and our families versus what we're doing at work and what we need there. And if we can't have those conversations, it's never going to get better. And so I love that you talk about trust. And if you guys go to Geoff's LinkedIn, you can find many, many, many posts about trust, and they're all great. And I think that I've never heard anybody talk about it the way you do. And I think it goes from our basic human needs all the way up to the CEO of a company and how supported do they feel to be real and talk to their team in a vulnerable way.
Well, Oak. I mean, Oak McClough. We often have a lively debate about this because when I was a CEO, I would always say it was a trust and an honor, to lead my people and to have, and more importantly, to have followers. And Oak is very big on servant leadership. I mean, that's a big thing for him, and we'd often debate that. I go back and say that again. It's an honor, and with that becomes respect, right? And so there's very few time and very few examples in the world where you can actually see examples of respect and honor, right, in the CEO role or in the business world. And government is exactly the same, and business looks up to government on how they should behave. And like regulation, we don't need regulation. We need to behave in a certain way, right? And so even in companies now, we're now starting to see the CTO, the Chief Trust Officer, because they know there's a trust issue. They've now got to govern this to make it happen. And it's like, why should you do what you'll say you're going to do and do it well, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I actually interviewed Oak a few weeks.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
But I think part of what is so profound about his servant leadership is because it's based on military,
right?
Because he's been in the military for decades, and how that team and the military, where they all depend so heavily on each other, is carried over into the business world. And I think that I've done a lot of work with military stuff around suicide, and you learn that even after people are not active anymore, they keep in touch with those people. They're like family. And it's because what they've been through. And if we can model that in the business world for leadership,
Yeah.
100%, we would all be better.
I agree, and I've had Oak speak at our company events in London. I've had him over, and I love that because you need to hear it from the military minds and the military experts and having big commercial CEOs with Oak, you get a really good debate. I mean, I think this problem can be resolved. I really do, but it starts with commitment, right?
Mhm.
How is it just an idea, or is this something you genuinely want to facilitate? I think I'm starting to see trust in organizations at another level. So
Mhm.
at least people are talking about the word trust. And you go to any media article, any media newspaper, any media anything, and trust. So we are talking about it. Now the question is, can we execute this? Because it's not about words, it's about actions, right? Trust
Mhm.
is cognitive behavior, it's actions, right? And but here's the thing, when you start looking at productivity holes right now and lack of employee engagement, when I did a research paper on trust a little while ago for my book, that research paper showed that 69% of line managers and chief executive officers were not trusted by their people, right? That's one measure, right? That's just one measure, and there's plenty more. Seriously,
Well,
plenty more.
it's also what you said earlier. You can't have trust without respect
No,
or caring about other people. Like,
compassion,
yeah,
empathy.
compassion.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about compassionate leadership. We talk about authenticity and the authentic leader. Look, if I'm working for a company and I'm working for the CEO, one of the main reasons I'm there is because of the vision, the mission, and the values, and his ability. He or she, they said they're going to do something, that they execute it. But if they just talk and they don't execute, I'm going to leave quite quickly. And actually, the Gen Zs are saying, "You don't share my values. I'm not learning from you. I'm off." We've got a leadership issue in the world. McKinsey are not wrong every year, nor a Bain, nor a PwC every year, saying that 84% of leaders just maintain, sustain. Well, in this economy, you can't do that, right? You've got to constantly keep moving forward. Like in the old days, you remember the second industrial revolution and the third industrial revolution came together. We've got the fourth and fifth now. I said that in my last book, Purposeful Discussions. That's happening now, and the speed of everything, humans are not going to be able to catch up. Well, we've got to get the trust foundation right, because if we don't get the trust foundation right for the fifth industrial revolution, it's gone, out of sight, out of mind, and we're going to end up in isolation, loneliness, more mental health, no psychological safety, no well-being, right? And you've got to have respect. Like, I go for a walk in the park, with my other half, and it's just laughter, joy, fun. No phones, nothing. Just 2 or 3 hours reminiscing, looking at the vistas, looking at views, watching the river, and actually having the best time of our lives, right? I'm not interested in phones when I do that.
Mhm.
And we all need to learn to switch it off, or have there's a lady, Leslie Petrel from Harvard. She wrote she wrote a book, Sleeping with Your Smartphone. Right, but she proved a point. So what she said to, I think it wasn't McKinsey, it wasn't Bain, was it Bain? It was one of the big four, and she said, right guys, I'm going to do an experiment. All your phones off. I'm going to increase your productivity by at least 25%, because you're going to collaborate. You're going to start talking to one another, not sending emails. You're going to talk to one another, and you're going to be more innovative, more creative, and great things are going to happen. And she was right. And she was right. Innovation, creativity. We saw that in the pandemic. Well, I think right now we've got a trust pandemic, right? Productivity, global productivity, we've got a massive global hole of $8.8 trillion. People don't realize that. Everyone's going, oh my God, what are we going to do to get productivity? Well, you can start getting some trust back in leadership first, right? And people need to engage and collaborate with one another. Creativity, we lack creativity. The pandemic was very good at destroying creativity, because you can't do that on a video, right? You can't do that on Zoom WebEx, Teams, whatever. It's face-to-face energy exchange.
Hmm.
But you look somebody in the eye and tell them you're going to do something. You didn't need NDA agreements, contracts in the old days. You had a handshake. I'm
Hmm.
going to pay you Friday. You're paid. Right? So I go back to what I said earlier, regulation. We don't need regulation if people behave in the right way. You
Yeah.
talk about company culture, right? We
Mhm.
need to create more and better culture. We got a project going on in Oman at the moment, right? And it's like 9 companies, and basically they've stripped out all the silos. They want a culture of innovation. They want a culture of working. And guess what? Trust is at the very center of it.
Well, I think trust is also, it goes both ways. Like the employees have to trust the leaders, and the leaders have to trust the employees.
Yeah.
And I think for me, back in 2018, when I um, had my event company and I had employees, and I was still doing a lot of things myself because I just felt like I had to. And when I decided to delegate more and trust them with clients without me being there and things like that,
Yeah.
our business doubled. The next year we had double the revenue. And it's that was profound to me because I was in the mind of, well, if I quit doing certain things, or I quit being at every event and making sure everything's right, then things might fall apart, and it was
Yeah.
completely the opposite thing because I trusted them and I had trained them. And when they said, I want to learn about something, I found a way for them to learn what they wanted to learn, whether
Yeah.
it was from me or somebody else. And I think it was just, you hire employees that are competent in whatever you need them to do, but it's also your job to train them and to help them learn what is going to
100%.
them get to the next level. And if you have that interest in them to help them grow, it's only going to help you as the leader.
100%. And we've seen it in the past. Yeah, insecure leaders micromanage. Now, micromanagement should only ever be used for high risk, short term projects. And you put that into a culture, it's a disease. It will kill your people, it will kill your top talent, people will leave. What you're talking about is learning, development, open minds. Look, somebody at the back of the room may have something really important to say. Bring them in. Let their voice be heard. And this is, I was doing this, my God, I was doing this in corporate management years ago. I had open door policy. I had the ability for people to actually have a voice. I created culture, right? A culture around all of this. And we're struggling today. And that was 30 years ago. Right? So, I'm like, where is it? Where is your, collaborative culture? Where is your psychological safety environment? Where is your ability to actually spend time with people, help people, support people, allow people to grow, allow them to make their own mistakes,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Innovation, and I go back to innovation comes from creativity, right? Look, Sir Isaac Newton, 1650, right? We had a pandemic. Guess what he created? Okay, gravity. He's had the solution for gravity, right? Right? I bet no one said don't step this way and put your hand up, right? So look, let's get something straight. We go look at the Romans. We look at how the Romans were really creative back in their day. Look at architecture. Look at underfloor heating the Romans used to produce. I mean, oh wow, can't even get that right today unless you got a good plumber, right? Seriously, right? So I talked to you about creativity and I talked to you about real innovation. We're not spending enough time with one another. Look, let's get out of home. Let's get, swap out your boxer shorts for a pair of jeans and get to the office and start having conversations with people. When I'm on the board of directors, those water cooler walks and those drinks and those coffees and those lunches and those dinners are, and even I do with the board directors, I walk with them sometimes along the river. we get we seek resolutions. We agree on things. We collaborate, right? You know, this is how it's supposed to be done, right? Look, everyone's got pressure. I understand short fuse, but you know what? If you want to get stuff done, you've got to be calm and collective and focused. And ethics comes into this, right? We are very big on ethics in the consultancy. We only bring on clients where we believe there's a vested interest on both sides. We have to put a lot into every single client that we work with, and we want to make sure that it's reciprocated, and that we have that's the proper way of doing it. We're not transactional, not interested, because too much of us have to get us go into the things that we're doing. And I think the world could take a really good look at that, because I think that we can get back to liking one another, communicating, speaking the truth, being open and authentic without having people, talk over you or shut you down. These, as I said, mistrust. It's not difficult to create that, a toxic, narcissic environment, which is not just about two people. It spreads, right? It spreads, and suddenly, before you know it, your productivity's down 45%, and your stock price is down. Right, and then the CFO's coming around minimizing the whole department, right? So why even bother? Why not think more creatively about what needs to be done? And trust is at the center of all of this, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's ways to do an anonymous survey of your team and find out what the big issues are without having, asking them personally and making them uncomfortable or making you uncomfortable. There's ways to do that where you can find out what are the big issues that you need to address without, turning over the whole team.
You made me laugh. We're on the board of directors, and we're saying, right, can we discuss the employee satisfaction report and a survey? Yep. How many people actually did you speak to? 0. So, well, what are you presenting?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's true. And I think, in the old days it was routine that you had an annual review with your boss. And
Yeah,
I don't think that happened.
I got my directors, believe it or not, I got my directors, every single one of them, to do quarterlies, and they hated me for it. But I said, no, we are going to have a two-way appraisal system, and we are going to make sure that every single person meets their objectives. And if they don't, you're going to give them the support to make them do that, because I'm paying bonuses, right? And you're going to have a relationship with that employee. I had the highest, I never, my employee retention levels was at the highest level because of it. Let's get that straight. I never lost too many people, right? Because of the way I got my directors to manage them, right? And at the end of the year, they're happy that they've achieved all, the directors that have actually got their objectives met and surpassed. And actually, the employees have executed everything they said they were going to do, because it's a two-way relationship. And I got bonuses, and they got bonuses.
That's great.
Rather than leave it to month 9 and think, oh my God, I've got an appraisal to do. On what?
Mm-hmm. I think that also one of the best things people have ever told me that I learned is, like, don't wait until the review every year to tell somebody they're doing something wrong. Like, you need to be coaching them throughout the year and on what, and hopefully they're learning, or they're asking you to learn things, and you're making that happen. And I think it's a give and take, from everyone involved to make everybody better, like all the boats rise, not just the CEO.
Look, I'm with you. I think the training, the learning and development, this is the glue. The member of your staff says, I really want to learn psychology. You pay for it. You let them learn. They are going to bring that value back to the organization. There needs to be a culture of learning, and then you'll build their trust, right? This I think is actually a massive subject, because I think that the learning, the development, and as I said, training needs to be on the top of everyone's agenda if you want to hold on to your staff.
Yeah, I agree. I really appreciate you having this conversation with me today.
Dina, I've loved it. You know I love to talk about trust.
Yeah, well, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay. Dina's question. Let's go.
I want to know if you can remember what your best idea ever was in the shower.
Best ever, ever, ever.
Like your best idea that might have come in the shower.
It was the best idea that I ever created was entrepreneurial leadership, and that came from the shower. Douglas, I, I don't know, I had too much coffee that day, but I rang up Douglas, and said, Doug, I've got this great idea. And he's like, what's happened? I said, I've just had the shower. He said, I don't need to know about what you did in the shower, but he's saying, look, I do want to know about what you're going on about. I said, mindset, entrepreneurial leadership, mindset. And that was the trigger. And literally, after that phone call with Douglas, I went on for a massive hike. And by the time I came back, which was like 3 hours later, I put that whole thing together. And that came from the shower.
That's awesome.
And you know what? I swear to you, it's that water is cathartic.
Yeah. There's science behind the hot water on your neck that gets
Oh,
more blood
yeah.
running in your brain, which, gives you these ideas. And I think, um, it happened for me during COVID when I was at home and I didn't have to, I was used to like taking a shower in 5 minutes and going to work, like, because you're in a hurry.
Always in,
But
out.
if
Yeah.
you have time to get in a shower and not be in such a hurry, you might be surprised at the productive ideas that come to you.
I, you know, it is a productive way to do things. It is an area of, like, I think if you think about our week, there are very few times when the phone is not going to be, you'll be immersed within it. If you go to the hairdressing salon, as an example, you can't really use the phone because they're saying move this way, move that way, and it's time just to relax. Yeah. Um, as I said, and first thing in the morning, it's the shower. I know people that do ice baths at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, guys, what are you doing? And no, this is really good for our creative juices. I'm like, okay, I'll stick to my showers, thanks. Right? Yeah. So, but if you're in there, like I said, if you're in there, even when you're like putting kind of like the soap gel on, or your hair conditioner slash hair shampoo on, you're thinking while you're doing it. It's a great thought process. But equally, I say going for very long walks is great for mental health. It's great for ideas. Yeah.
I agree. Nature is my
Oh,
second place, anywhere in nature.
I've I've fallen back in love with those country walks and those country parks, and just being in that space, because I love nature. I always have, always will. You know how much I love Sedona. I've been a big part of that community for years. I really I appreciate nature. Like sunsets. In London, I watch the sunrise, and that's to me that stunning aura of beauty that just arrives, and it's like starts my day,
Yeah.
starts my day, and it's great for creativity.
hmm That's true. And we all need more creativity.
I agree with that completely, but
Yeah.
I wish we had more creativity around people and trust.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're starting the conversation.
Good. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. It all helps, right?
Yes. Thank you so much for being here, Geoff.
Dina, absolute pleasure. Lovely to be with you again. Thank you.